I received an email this week from Akhil Patel. Akhil Patel I've been following actually for quite a period of time, since the early 2010s, when he published a newsletter which talked about the 18-year property cycle. Akhil has just recently published a book called The Wealth Advantage, which is a great book. He's UK based, so the information is very much relevant to our property market. And he's got a contrarian a view on what's actually happening within the property market that really contradicts what the news outlets are talking about, and in terms of what many other property investors, particularly those with YouTube channels, are talking about, and saying that we're going into a market crash and everything is Armageddon and it's all falling apart, almost citing a 2008 scenario. Akhil and many of his colleagues completely rebut this, and what particularly interested me and got me interested in Akhil's philosophy in the first place was I've been involved, as some of you will know, in property since 1973, and so I've lived through three 18-year cycles, or we're actually in the third of those 18-year cycles, and it very much mirrored what my personal experiences were. So a lot of the things they were talking about were things that I had observed and actually come to certain conclusions myself, nowhere to the intellectual level that they had, but certainly some of the philosophies that they talked about mirrored my own thinking, and so therefore that really provided credence to me that this was a viable philosophy, I guess. What I have found, to be honest, is that many other people talk about the 18-year cycle, but they don't seem to really have the depth of understanding. I've read many books and many papers on the subject, and everything that I read just confounds and confirms that this is a very much a real cycle, and I really believe in it. And so what he's saying in today's world, which is the up-to-date situation that we're in, is that the news media, and you'll have heard this yourself, we're talking about cost of living crisis and how people are really suffering high inflation, high interest rates. But the reality is, you know, we've had high inflation before, we've had high interest rates before, far in excess of what we have now, and by no way. What the media is saying is that we've got all these problems, but a lot of these problems existed before anyway, you know. So for instance, it's very easy to bring somebody in front of a camera and say how badly that they're doing. Those people were always doing badly. They were always struggling. There's people always been struggling, but that's part of our dysfunctional economic system that allows that to happen. And so there's nothing new there. This just happens to be a story that is creating news, and therefore they can get mileage out of it. And as most of us know, the news media only like to publish bad stories. And so what he's thinking is really happening in the economy itself is some of it is observation. He's saying, and I'm very much of the same opinion, go into any major city and you don't see really a fall in economic activity. What you're actually seeing is a lot of spending. People are still going on holidays. People are still going out to restaurants, going out to pubs. They're going to theatre. They're spending money. There doesn't seem to be any real cost of living crisis out there. Now, that's not to say that people aren't suffering, and there aren't some people suffering. There absolutely is, but were they not suffering anyway? And so there definitely has been an impact from the rising electricity prices and the rate of inflation, food inflation particularly, which always hurts the people at the lower ends of the margins. But for the most part, most people are not struggling. And he illustrates this by saying that if you look at the savings rates, the savings rate in the UK has actually gone up over the last few years. Part of that started to go up during the COVID, early parts of COVID, because people couldn't spend money. They then started to reevaluate their lifestyle. They were able to cut back because they were forced to cut back on certain things. And then when we came out of the pandemic and things started opening up, people started started to say, well, actually, do I actually need to spend money on this, and do I need to spend money on this because I actually managed to save money in different areas. So the savings rate's gone up, and currently the savings rate is at 15%. So why is this housing market slowed? Well, first of all, people who are looking to sell and are not pressed to sell are holding out at prices that they believe that the property is worth. And so therefore that very much slows the market. There are people who are dropping the prices because for some reason they need to get out of that property, whether it is they're moving to a new area or they are really struggling. The other thing that he talks about is that we saw this cost of living crisis, so to speak, coming, and that a lot of people prepared for it by fixing their mortgages. So they went for 2 to 5 year extended mortgages, so the real impact of that has not happened. He thinks that the news will change towards the end of this year, and what will then happen is that we will actually start to see some of those savings then go in and go into further spending. So a lot of people are holding back from buying because they believe that the prices are going to drop. When they actually start to see that prices are not dropping and maybe start to rise, then they're going to start wanting to move again. So the property market will then start to move. We'll then find that property prices then start to rise. The level at which they rise will depend on what people's perception of where it's going and how much they're willing to offer for future property prices. But we're going into this boom period that is going to come. Again, I say advisedly boom because it may be a small boom or it may be a large boom. We don't know the parameters of that. But as we move into that period through to 2026, when we're expecting the peak of the current cycle and then the crash, we're going to see some movement upwards. Those savings will then get released into the property market. There is some evidence of this from the US, because if you look at the US, again, he points out where their savings rate is actually -3, and currently many parts of the US, they've managed to lower inflation, but they're also going through an upsurge in property prices. The US usually leads the rest of the world out of the market, being the strongest economy, so they move us out. And so the evidence is that boom will then filter through to the rest of the world, and you'll start to see property prices rising again. So it's a contrarian view on what things are. One thing I would recommend you do is find a copy of this book. I'll put a link in the description below so that you can actually access it. It's very much well worth a read. It's kind of uniquely laid out. I'm really excited because Akhil has actually promised to come on and do an interview for the channel in September. So if you really want to listen to this guy, he's got really some great insights. So come and join us. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss that and you'll get a notification of it. But I'm really looking forward to speaking to Akhil and really fleshing out this 18-year cycle. The book, again, I highly recommend. It's a great read and give you a great understanding of what's happening in the property market, but also it really gives you a roadmap that you can use for all time, because he breaks down every year of the cycle where we are, and it makes you understand and allows you to basically take away from the noise that happens in the media and understand what's really happening. So he describes different events and saying this is what the media is saying, but this is what was really happening. And with that understanding, it gives you much more confidence for you to then invest where you need to invest. And he gives you at the end of each chapter what you should be doing next, how you should be treating your investments, whether that be property, of course, which this channel is dedicated to, or whether it be stock market. So it's a really good read, and I really thoroughly recommend this book to you. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. There's lots of videos around here. I think we're approaching 150 videos somewhere now, so there's plenty of content for you to consume, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.